Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drew B. Wilson, with more than 2 decades in sales. I have seen it, heard about it, lived through it. Now I'm bringing the stories I don't have to you, my favorite people on the internet and in the world, the sales community, because let's be honest, sales is the greatest job of all time. It literally gives you an opportunity no matter where you're from, what background, what personality. You can make a massive amount of fun and living in the sales industry. Today's guest, someone I'm very excited to have on. He is an amazing author. He is someone that I have done some research and seen. He's doing some pretty dang cool things, so I know he's going to bring some value to the show. He's the author of Let's Go Win. He's my new friend, Mr. J.M. Ryerson. What's up, brother?
Derby, what's happening, man? Thank you for having me. I'm blessed to be here, humbled, and yes, sales is life. I freaking love sales. I can't wait to dive into it, man.
I love it. Well, let's make this easy and get them excited. I want to know from you, man. I want to hear your wildest sales story. What do you got for me?
You know, I don't know if it's the wildest one because I've seen people cooking bricks on a stove before. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff. I walked through hallways where there was literally tiaras all the way from the floor to the ceiling. So I've been in some crazy, weird spots. I think the most profound story for me, I was sitting at a kitchen table. I did life insurance when that was how I got really introduced to sales. And I remember I was in Modesto, California, sitting at a table with a single mom, 3 kids. Now, she literally, we were looking at, it was about $3 a day. So it was just under $100 per month for her to make sure that she was covered, take care of the kids if anything were to happen to her. And she looks at me and she says, I can't afford it. And I'm looking around, brother, and there's chips and soda. I mean, everywhere, just junk food galore. And I said, hey, I understand you can't afford it. That totally makes sense. Can I ask you a question? Can I just take a look at your budget for a quick minute? She's like, why? I said, because I'm looking around and you have $500 worth of junk food surrounded. I'm curious how much you're actually spending on this on a monthly basis. She said, cool. We went through her credit card statement. Over $350 per month she was spending on junk food for her kids. And I said, look, it's not that you can't afford it. It's that you, in the current lifestyle that you're doing, you're right, you can't. But what if we knocked your junk food down to $150 a month? Now you have $200 and you're going to put an extra $100 in the bank. That moment, she's like, absolutely. Now, honestly, she had given me like 3 no's, so most people would have just walked away. But I'm looking at these 3 kids, brother. I'm like, no freaking way are you going to give me the excuse that you can't afford it when you're feeding them all this stuff that's not good for them anyway. So she walks away and she's like, oh no, I had no idea we were spending that much money. She got her budget down to under $100 a month. Now we have the life insurance in policy, and now she's actually putting stuff into her account. It was one of those moments where I said, I don't care how many no's. If I see the need, we are going to work through to find a solution. And fortunately, I haven't had a death policy on her, but I have on other people that were telling me no as well. So, brother, the one thing I will say is when you see a need for these people, don't take that first no as a hit. Just be like, hey, let's work through this. Are you sure? Let's go through even your budget. And it totally made sense for her. So, again, not the craziest one, but to me, the most impactful one.
You know, sometimes impactful is important because it leaves that long-term effect, right? I know that situation. I can think of times and I came from the insurance world as well, so I understand having that. The life insurance conversation, it can be very taboo. It can be very difficult for some people because they don't want to give a hard truth. And I love the way that you reframe that for the lady, because it's, well, ma'am, it's not that you don't have the money. It's you don't have it right now. However, if we can find it, here's where I can see a quick estimate of where you might have it. And then also, you know, just I'm sure not only the effect of having that insurance, but think about the health effects and how much money you're really saving her and her family long term. We could spiral off on that and use that in a number of conversations, but I want the listener to take that away. It's like, hey, just because she said no from a financial standpoint, it didn't mean that she didn't have the capability. So don't judge your customer and just say, oh, well, they're broke or they can't afford it. It's that maybe they just don't have that frame of mind or the perspective to be able to see where it's a possibility for themselves. And that's one thing that for me personally, I had to learn along the way. Maybe you also the same, is like you can't sell out of your own pocket. You can't judge a book by its cover because everyone's in a different situation. And if you can just learn how to understand the situation they're in, ask a few more questions, be, cognizant of what's going on in your surroundings, especially the in-home sales. That's a big opportunity to kind of what's in the area, what are we seeing, what can we work with. So I loved what you said there about that. And also I really appreciate the, don't let that first no or second no be the thing that pushes you away, because a lot of time there is that surface level, well, I don't think I'm interested, or no, I can't really afford it. When you said if there's a need, it is now my duty to do everything in my power to show up and to provide that solution, that service, that product, whatever it is. Is that something that you learned in the insurance industry, or did you learn some of that, kind of in your earlier sales days?
Yeah, I think I did learn it earlier. I actually learned my sales skills at Spencer Goods in college. So I learned some interesting ways to do upgrades for people. Every time that they would buy something, I was always asking them, do you need batteries? Now, that wasn't a great example of the need, but I will say one of the biggest tips I ever figured out, and this is how I treated this woman. I treated her like she was my mom. I look at every person, every prospect that I've ever met with, and I treat them the same way I would want my mom to be treated, which means I'm going to dig a little deeper. I'm going to ask the extra questions to make sure that she fully understands what we're talking about, that she is fully, in this case, that he or she, they really understand, because I'm not trying to pitch anything. I am literally going out there and I'm asking questions. I'm listening to them, and then I'm saying, okay, this is where we're going to go. Because the truth is, people don't move forward for three things, 3 Ps. It's the person. So if they don't like me, cool, man, I can't change that. I'll get somebody else out here that can. It's the product. Maybe they don't love the product, but 90% of the time it's a price issue, or you didn't explain it to them well enough to see the value in what you're providing. When you can realize that, hey, it's just coming down to one of these 3 Ps, which one is it? Now we can actually isolate the objection that you might be getting. Now we can actually come up with a proper dialogue that we're going to do so we can actually serve them. So yeah, man, I built 3 IMOs in the insurance world and built sales teams for years. I don't get to talk about sales as much as I used to, so I just get jazzed, man. I could do this forever. I absolutely love it.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm grateful to hear that, especially from someone, as experienced as you are in the industries that you're in, especially from sales perspective for this show, because there's so much to the consistency. And a lot of times we hear, well, what's the best sales script? Well, I can't give you a sales script. And even if I'm in your industry, like the script I use is not necessarily going to work for you. I can give you some basics, and that's, a great starting point. But I would imagine you had to experience along the way that it didn't matter if you used someone else's script, you still had to find a way to make it your own, because it's how you ask those questions and how you show up with absolute empathy and a willingness to, as you said, treat that individual like a real human, and a human that you care about immensely at an even deeper level. Like, that's next level sales, because that's a mindset shift. Because you could be in a bad mood, but you know what? If you show up and hey, I'm going to treat this person like my mom. Some people are in bad moods and don't treat their moms well. Don't do that out there, y'all. Let's be honest here. If you're going to treat them good, right? Treat your mom well. That's why I got a mom tattoo on my neck at 17. So I know the game. I treat my people just the same way, because empathy is important. And then having the confidence to say, hey, I know we can help you solve this problem. Are you willing to play all in with me so that we can solve this problem? Because if so, I will play all in with you and we will make it happen. So I love both sides of that story, because there's so much to unpack there. And I'm going to get into you a little bit. So JM, tell me a little bit, I always like to ask, when it comes to sales, what do you think is your personal secret weapon or superpower when you get into a sales transaction or conversation?
So assume the sale is why I'm good at what I do, man. At the end of the day, it's not how we were taught to talk. We were taught to ask a question and then wait for the answer, right? When you assume the sale, When you have built enough value, you've asked the questions. When you go to assume the sale, you say, here's what we're going to do today. I don't say, would you like to do this? Does that make sense? Those are freaking terrible, terrible things when you're about to close. Hey, Drewby, here's what we're going to do today. I'm on your side of the table now. We're rowing the boat in the same direction, and I'm letting you know this is, so I'm leading them to whatever solution that they have. Because often I see people do two catastrophic errors. The first one is they do horrible rapport in the beginning. So they'll be like, hey, Drewby, how's your day? Well, nobody gives a care, man. Like, that's such a generic, horrible question. If I was sitting with you, I would look and I'd say, interesting. He's got a Richie Rich poster on his wall. He's got call the damn leads on his hat. He's got a mom tattoo. I'm going to pick one of those and say, hey, can I ask you, why did you call your show Call the Damn Leads podcast? That's going to lead him into something where he's actually passionate about it. Now we can relate on something, and it's not that generic, yeah, so you went to school, I went to school too. Like, nobody cares, man. Find something to really relate to him on. Once you've done that, you treat him like your mom, and then you assume the sale. I will tell you the other thing. Gosh, man, I get too excited on it. The referrals, as much as I love leads, and I do, my entire career was built on referrals, and it's the easiest thing in the world. So if I were to break it down, those would be really the three things: is treat them like your mom, have some genuine rapport, assume the sale, and get referrals.
Hey, referrals is something that it's one of my favorite things. When I go to consult with a business, I ask them, I'm like, all right, how much of your business every month comes from referrals? And most of them go, well, I don't know for sure. And I go, all right, let's start there. Because those people already like you and they trust you. So let's call them and ask them who they know that can also like you and trust you. And maybe we'll get some, and crazy enough, a lot of times you call to ask for referrals and you find out that the people need repeat business of some sort. It's like, oh, you know what? I was just thinking about grabbing another policy for my, son-in-law, or they just had a baby and they need to get something, and gosh, they're not going to do it. So I'm going to set it up for them until they can afford. Like, you never know if you're not calling your current clients. And it's so crazy to me that people will work so hard to get a client and then never call them again, or like never follow up and to just check in and say, hey, how are you doing? How's life? Is there anything else I can help you with? It's the wildest thing. So I love that you brought that up, because there's so much opportunity just in that. Marketing is great, but if you're not using what you got already, you're wasting your time and opportunity. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'd love to know, because you've scaled some sales teams and you've built, a couple of IMOs, as you said. And I know you've written a book called Let's Go Win. So you come to me as kind of a leader. And I know on this show, there are some folks that are listening that, have started a small team or are kind of responsible for maybe 5 or 10 guys. Touch a little bit about how you really keep them motivated to show up and to go win, because sales can be kind of a rejection thing, right? You deal with a lot of no's all day long, as you said. So what do you like to do as a leader, and how do you really like to get your team fired up to go out there and win?
Yeah, well, one thing, I've said this many times. I've run, I don't know how many different contests, thousands and thousands. There's one go-to that never fails. It's running a contest for a TV. For whatever reason, people love freaking TVs. I've spent so much money on Rolex watches and even leasing cars for people. I mean, the extravagant ones. And you know what? They are not nearly as effective as that 55-inch TV. Because here's why. People love recognition. That is the number one reason that 71% of employees are currently disengaged in the workforce, according to Gallup. Well, why? Because they don't feel appreciated. So as a leader, the most important thing you can do, I call it EPR. You encourage, you praise, and you recognize. Sales guys and gals thrive off this. And by the way, every leader listening, it costs you $0 to say, Drewby, I see you, brother. I appreciate you. You're doing a fantastic job. I cannot tell you how great a job you're doing. Even if Drewby just went 0 for 14 that week, you know what I'm going to say? Your activity was super high, man. I'm proud of you. You went out there and you put in the work. Now, we're going to work on some skills, right? We're going to get permission to work on what's really happening, probably do a ride along or a shadow of some sort. But I'm going to say, you know what, brother? You're putting in the effort. And there's two things that you're completely responsible for in your life, and that's your attitude and your activity. And if his attitude is high, his activity is high, I'm going to say, man, I am proud of you. I appreciate you. We're going to get you there. Because if they're not putting in the effort, now if Drewby went 0 for 3, there's not a whole lot I can say other than call the damn leads, pick up the phone and get it going, right? So it's just finding those opportunities to recognize the effort and recognize the attitude. Because if those two things go together, man, you're going to have some superstars on your team. Long-winded way of saying, make sure you recognize them.
No, I love that. And I think that's something that it can be easy to overlook, right? Because as sales professionals, a lot of times what happens is the Peters principle. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically someone who's really great at sales gets promoted to a leadership position, but they're not necessarily cut out to be a leader. And that's okay. And you may be listening to this and be in that position where you're like, man, I was a badass sales guy, but now I'm responsible for all these knuckleheads, and like my sales are tanking because I'm busy on them, and like they're not doing great because I don't know how to talk to them. That does happen. Like I personally have been in that situation. And what I love about what you said is just kind of stepping back and looking at the KPIs, the metrics, the activity, and the attitude. Because that's really what's going to be the difference maker. Is if the activity is there, skill sets, those can be improved. Attitude, if the attitude's no good, I mean, you're really not going to be able to improve a whole lot of anything. So that's a big, testament for sure. But I really appreciate what you said about like encourage, praise. What was the last one?
And recognize.
Reward, recognize. That's what I'm writing that down because I like that. So that's
it's
good. Encourage,
EPR,
praise,
man.
recognize.
It's free. It's free to every business owner out there. Just use it. My gosh, the dividends are, you can't calculate how much you get from that, but I can tell you how much you lose when you don't recognize. And it's awful employee turnover. It's extremely it's so expensive for most companies.
It sure is. So we could spiral all day on this, and I want to be conscious of your time because I'm very respectful, especially someone who has worked as hard as you have to get where you are. So tell me a little bit about, kind of you got into sales early. You've done a lot of sales over the years. What has that allowed you to create in your own life? Coming from the background that you did.
Well, at the age of 27 was the first time I cracked the 7-figure code and 7-figure mark in a year. So being a kid from Montana, brother, that was never even on my radar. I didn't know that was ever in my destiny. So what have I created? I mean, 3 companies that I have with business partners as well that we've built up and sold. I've really created freedom where I get to choose to go to work or not if that's what I choose. Now, I choose to work. I love helping people. Let's Go Win is my passion. I don't think I'll ever sell this company because I call it my legacy company. I have 2 sons, and I really hope that someday they want to take this thing and run with it because it's a lifestyle. It's really helping people, inspire them to live their best life. So what have I created? Man, multiple homes and again, freedom for me is the most important thing. And so I love sales. I mean, I tell people all the time, sales is life, especially when people are like, I don't like sales. Okay, tell me more. Well, it feels gross, or it's like car salesman. Ooh. And I'm like, look, when you go tell your wife you want to go golfing, you're selling. When she says, I want to go out with my girlfriends, she's selling. Everything in this world is sales. So I don't understand when people are like, I don't like it. I understand not liking the tacky stuff. And you think of that, again, the used car salesman is kind of the thing that most people talk about. But if you look at sales as the fact that I'm just communicating with another human being and I'm helping them, how could you not love it, man? I mean, it's literally, it's what makes the world go round. So I love it every single day. I talk about it, but I don't get to do it as focused as we're doing on the show. And it's just fun, man.
Well, I can feel the energy and the passion, so I appreciate that you have been able to bring that out during the show because this is a lot of what gets me excited as well. Again, knowing that no matter where you come from, whatever your background, whatever history you may have had, you can come into sales and you can use it to make a massive impact on the world because every person that you have a conversation with, every person who you help solve that problem to get out of that pain that they're in or to finally arrive at that destination of pleasure that they've been seeking for so long. Like there's just something to that energy and knowing that it doesn't matter where you came from, that you can be the person that helps them. the ripple effect of that is something I ponder on a lot, right? Like, you have one conversation, that person makes a difference, but where do they go from there? And I would imagine you having built those multiple companies and trained all these sales professionals and teams that, you've been able to make a very massive impact on the world. And I'm excited to continue watching your journey as you do so. And I'd love to know, because, we're coming short on time and I want to be respectful. If they love this story and they enjoyed it, first, I'm going to make sure to remind them to share it on social media, to make sure they let people know about it, right? That's why we do what we do, so that we can get out and help more people. What's the best way for them to come and find you, or how can they tag you when they share this? What's the goods on that?
Yeah, brother. I get the most traction on Instagram. So let's go win 365. On my website at www.letsgowin.com, there's a free work-life balance. Wrote a ton of blogs. And, I have a few books. Check it out. I hope that it inspires you, because I literally wrote that first book for my two sons. And I shared it with the world because I want others to have this knowledge that I've been fortunate enough through mentors and the various authors and everything. So yeah, man, let's go win 365. DM me, hit me up. And if I can help you in any way, I'd love to. What I've been doing recently is partnering with companies and doubling their revenue in the first year. That's my commitment. So if anybody's listening, you're like, dude, I want to double my revenue. Great. Let's do it. Let's have some fun, and let's go win.
Hey, well, you heard the man. If you got some value out of the show, share it on social media, tag it on Instagram at Let's Go Win 365 and at Call the Damn Leads. Let people know this has been a really great episode. Now, Jam, I've got one more question before you get out of here, and I think you're going to do great with this one from experience. So I always like to ask, because sales is such a great industry, there's always someone new walking in the door. There's always someone new taking this opportunity and this step to better their life. That person, let's pray that they showed up, and this podcast episode is one that they find early on in their journey. If you can give them one piece of advice on how to be massively successful in this business, what would you give them?
Take the masks off, man. At some point, we all started to want to fit in, and we start putting masks on. And I say this all the time. Masks are meant for parties. They're not meant for real life. That authentic you, when you're able to show up as you authentically, people will buy into that all day long. Your sales will absolutely skyrocket. And you mentioned it earlier, like, give me the perfect, script and the objection handler and all that. No, just be you. If you don't know the answer to a question, say, you know what? I don't know. That's a great question. I will find out for you. Don't try and say, yeah, I know, and pretend like you do. You don't. Being vulnerable and being authentic is the greatest gift that I received, and it allowed my second and third company to grow at about 30% per year, and it was far less time and effort for me than the first company and a half, where I was grinding, showing up with a suit and tie, stuffy. It wasn't me, man. I'm a t-shirt and jeans guy. When you show up as your authentic self, your sales will skyrocket.
I absolutely love that advice, and it's 100% something that I can get behind, because I'm the same way. Again, I'm covered in tattoos. I have been since I was 16, so showing up as my authentic self was something I had to do right from the start, because I didn't have a choice. It was right there on the cover of my book. So I love that advice. I love this episode. I've had an amazing time. I know that anyone who got to this point in the show has gotten at least 7 figures worth of value. And if you didn't, as he said, he's there to help you double your revenue. So go find him at Let's Go Win 365. JM, man, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Drewby, keep doing what you're doing, brother. I appreciate you having me. I'm humbled that I was a guest on your show, and keep it up, man. You're amazing.
You got it, brother. Well, if you are here and you enjoyed it, like I said, share us on social media, hit subscribe, do the review, all those fun things. But more than anything, if you have a crazy sales story, you have something you want to share with the sales world, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Check out the information, submit your notes. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to have you on the show, just like my new friend JM, because let's be honest, sales is amazing, gives us every opportunity in the world to change the world one conversation at a time. You know what to do from here. Go call the damn leads. We'll see you on the next one.